Alright guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be doing a tier list for the healers in Classic Wrath. Now first of all, let's get some disclaimers out. I think healer tier lists are a bit meh, okay, lack of a better word. I would quite happily put all the healers in tier A and call it a day just to irritate all the try-hard nerds who have anime girlfriend pillows. I've always thought when it comes to healers, it really is the player that makes the most amount of difference. Obviously some healers are going to get better logs, better healing numbers, but that isn't really an accurate way to determine a healer's skill. A healer's skill is determined by a number of very different things, like keeping people alive being one of them, and you can't measure how many times a healer made an absolute legendary clutch play to prevent the raid from wiping on Warcraft logs. You could easily clear all of the content in Classic Wrath with 5 of the least powerful healers considered by the community, FYI, not me. When it comes to DPS, it's very different because you could put a professional racing car driver in a Nissan Micra, make him do a timed lap, and it will always be slower than doing a timed lap in an Aston Martin Vulcan. Just like how a balanced Druid will always do less DPS than a Fury Warrior in vanilla World of Warcraft. I'll also never put a healer in the S tier because every healer has strong elements, but also weaker elements that other healers can simply just do better. Let's begin with a classic example, the Holy Paladin. So everyone is raging about Holy Paladins at the minute. I was in a GDKP the other day and a guy said 5 people in his guild are re-rolling to a Holy Paladin. Don't know how they're going to manage that one. This is simply because all they have to do is spam Holy Light, and because of a glyph that essentially cleaves the Holy Light to close by people, by 5 yards anyway, they would just always top the meters. They just top the meters by spamming one button. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best healer in the game though. They are very simply a pure, unrelenting healing machine, okay? Especially as they have the ability Beacon of Light where all of their healing is duplicated onto another target. They also have great buffs, as always, but they also have some really cool raid cooldowns now, like Divine Sacrifice that essentially reduces all the damage a raid takes by 20% for 6 seconds. They also now get Sacred Shield, which is essentially a shield effect that just keeps refreshing itself. It's very powerful. But a Holy Paladin definitely has some drawbacks. Definitely isn't the most mobile healer in the game. You have to just hardcast Holy Light most of the time. You can't really do that much healing while on the move apart from Holy Shock, compared to other healers. You technically have no hot spells, although your heals can have a chance to generate a hot, but it's not as good as obviously Druid hots. And the AoE healing of Holy Light is nice when everyone is stacked up or when you're healing the melee groups, but when everyone is spread out, well then you can't AoE heal, and only other classes can AoE heal. Like for instance the Resto Druid, which I'm also going to put in the A tier. The new big spell for Resto Druid is Wild Growth. What it essentially is an AoE heal on a very short 6-second cooldown. It's 15 yards, where obviously the Paladin AoE heal is 5 yards, so it's much better at healing people when they're spread out, or preemptively applying it before big AoE damage is going to be inflicted on the raid. We also have a new talent where the Rejuvenation Wild Growth will give a target either Rage Runic Power or Energy, obviously based on their class, which can be a very significant DPS boost, because obviously resources normally equals more DPS for every single class, even the mana classes. Plus, you can actually use this to generate like a full Rage bar or a full Runic Power bar before the fight actually starts. They also pretty much never have mana issues when they get good enough gear, and they can keep loads of great hots on the tank. And now we have the Disc Priest, which has definitely become much more viable in Wrath. This is because Power Word Shield has been buffed quite dramatically. First of all, the mana cost has been reduced by a lot, so you can very easily spam this. Plus you get a lot of mana back actually when you use a Power Word Shield, because of a particular talent called Rapture, but this talent also does the exact same thing as the Revitalized Druid talent that gives energy, runic power, rage and mana. This means when a Disc Priest is blanket Power Word shielding as many people in the raid as they can, it means not only are they protecting them from a lot of damage, they're also increasing their DPS. This makes the Discipline Priest a very mobile healer because the majority of their abilities are, well, instant cast. It's very rare that Disc Priest is actually going to stop to hard cast some spells because, the other healers are filling in that role. When you have a Holy Paladin, Resto Druid and a Disc Priest in your raid setup, you can really want for nothing when it comes to the healing situation. And they also provide great cooldowns that they had in TBC, like Pain Suppression, which is essentially a shield wall, and then obviously Power Infusion, which you can use to get Fire Mages and Affliction Warlocks and other casters to cheese their logs. The only downside to Discipline Police really is how Powered Shield cannot be repeatedly cast on a certain target, because obviously it has the Weakened Soul debuff, which means bringing 2 Discipline Priests is normally not so much of a good idea, because you're just going to waste a lot of potential healing. Also, you can have the lowest priority on the Order-Wild Legendary Healing Mace. The Healing Mace converts your heals into absorbs. But the thing is, a Discipline Priest, they're not really using heals that much. They're already using absorbs, so they don't get the maximum usage out of that Healing Mace. And now let's move on to the second priest spec, the Holy Priest. I'm going to put them in B tier. Cold hard truth, really, is I just think a Holy Priest is a slightly worse version of a Resto Druid. Resto Druid have Wild Growth, which is like an AoE hot. Holy Priest have an AoE heal, which is like an instant heal, not a hot. So they have a very similar, great AoE heal, but the Holy Priest just has, less usefulness and less utility as a Resto Druid. It doesn't have that Revitalize talent, which increases the raid's DPS. Also doesn't have Innovates, Combat Reses. Oh, but what it does have is Lightwell. Yeah. They are really good at deep healing though. What I mean by that is they have increased healing power on targets below 50% health. So if a heal catches a tank who's very low on health, or obviously a DPS, it will spring them back up better than the other healers. They also have the talent called Guardian Spirit. Now, what this does is basically a cheat death spell. You put it on the target, and if that target dies within 10 seconds, he'll be brought back to life with 50% health. The issue with this is, how do you predict that? How do you know when the tank's going to die? How do you know when someone's going to die? It's really difficult to get any good use out of this, and trying to exploit its effect could be potentially quite risky and just end up with that target dying anyway. The good component of this, though, is for the 10 seconds that it's on the target, it will increase the amount of healing taken by 40%, so that is obviously a great one to put on the tank. I've seen videos that put him in the C tier, but I think that's a little bit harsh, in my opinion, because the Holy Priest definitely is still a really strong healer, especially with its Circle of Healing, great mana efficiency, and just raw healing power. But you're not going to bring more than one. We're definitely not going to bring more than one. A lot of people like to call him the backup last healer that you bring to the raid, like, oh, we've got all the essential healers, let's just bring a Holy Priest so we're not stacking too many classes too much, because obviously we care about loot distribution and things like that. And lastly, we have the Resto Shaman. They're definitely not as sought after as they were in TBC Classic, and that's why I'm going to put them in the B tier, and this is largely because Bloodlust and Heroism is a raid-wide buff now, not a party-wide one. Also, all of the buffs that a Resto Shaman can provide can also be provided by other classes now, so they're not really seen as good. An Elemental or Enhancement Shaman can also bring the spell haste totem as well. So now they have much less unique support, but they still bring great support. Abilities like Earth Shield that you just leave on the tank. Whenever he takes damage, he heals up a little bit, just makes tank healing much easier. Mana Tide Totem is even more powerful now, plus they can also remove curses now. And obviously we can't talk about Resto Shaman without talking about Chain Heal. The new thing to talk about, other than it being insanely great at burst healing a raid up after great raid damage, is with a glyph it will affect one more target, so it's even more powerful now. You can also make healing streams slightly more powerful, increased healing by 20% with a cheeky little glyph too, and overall it is just slightly more powerful. And obviously the Resto Shaman will shine on particular fights where Cleansing Totem and Tremor Totem can be used to great effect. So guys, let's round the video up. I've tried to be as fair as possible when it comes to evaluating all the healers. I think they're all great, but yeah, the Holy Paladin, Resto Druid and the Disc Priest, they're the big boy healers. You could argue that the Holy Paladin is slightly better than the other two as well. They're definitely slightly better than the Holy Priest and the Resto Shaman. You know what guys, the Holy Priest and the Resto Shaman, sometimes they're going to crawl up this tier list, but then sometimes those ones in tier A, they're going to crawl down. I think, long story short, Holy Priest, Resto Shaman, slightly worse than the other healers, but not really a massive amount. And that's it. End of story. Bob's your uncle. Play whatever healer you want, let's be honest. My name is MetaGoblin. This is my next video. Ciao.